But Mark, let's finish out this podcast. Let's go through 22 through 32. If you're joining us on YouTube, thank you for joining us. And you can also follow us on Twitter. Mark is at the Mark Weber with 2 E's. I am at Ricky Widmer. And Most Valuable Podcast is at Most Valuable Pod. If you're new to how we do this, we're doing 20 through 32. If you're on YouTube, thanks for joining. If you're on podcast services around the world, thanks for sticking on through. Mark, let's kick it off to you. Ravens? Yes, Ravens.
Yep,
on the
at
clock.
22, Chris Lindstrom, the offensive lineman out of Boston College. Then at 23 for the Texans, Deontay Thompson, the safety out of Alabama. The Raiders from the Chicago Bears going to go with Ja'Kai Polite, defensive end out of Florida. Then we got one of Ricky's favorite guys at 25 for the Eagles, Brian Burns, pass rusher out of Florida State.
Bernie Burns.
Colts going to go with Dexter Lawrence, defensive tackle out of Clemson. We got, for, again, the Raiders, this time from the Cowboys, going with Noah Fant, the tight end out of Iowa. Noah Fant the fart.
Noah what?
Noah Fart Fant. It was pretty great. I hope that he wasn't made fun of for that as a child, but I'm thinking it was likely.
I wonder if he's a gassy fella.
It could be. 28 Chargers going to go with Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle out of Clemson. Chiefs 29, Devin Bush, linebacker out of Michigan. Then we got this guy cracking his way into my first round. 30 Packers, Paris Campbell, wide receiver out of The Ohio State University. Then we got the Rams at 31, Jonathan Abram out of Mississippi State, the safety. Then at 32, rounding it out, Jalen Ferguson, defensive end out of Louisiana Tech.
Man, when we were talking about wide receivers, I did not even see Paris Campbell.
Mr. Clutch.
Kind of slip into your top 20, your top 32.
It would upset me greatly for the Packers to have Paris Campbell.
That means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wide receivers for you in the first round.
Wide receivers are important.
5 wide receivers. So starting off
These teams desperately need them.
Starting off with my number 22, the Ravens, they will go with Josh Jacobs, the running back from Alabama, Roll Tide. Then number 23, the Texans go at Greg Little, the offensive tackle from Ole Miss. Then the Raiders go Devin Bush, the linebacker from Michigan and the Wolverines. Then the Eagles, they will go David Montgomery, the running back from Iowa State. Then the Colts, they go A.J. Brown, wide receiver from Ole Miss. The Raiders, again, third time, they're going to go Byron Murphy, the cornerback out of Washington. Cornerback, as my voice kind of cracks there. Then the Chargers go Jerry Tillery, the defensive tackle out of Notre Dame. The Chiefs, they will go Jonathan Abram, the safety from Mississippi State. The Packers will go offensive line. They will go Chris Lindstrom, the guard out of Boston College. The Rams go Jalen Ferguson, the defensive end out of Louisiana Tech. And then the Patriots round it all out going with Noah Fant, the tight end from Iowa. Mark, I want to ask you about that.
Yeah.
So there's been this guy kind of cracking big boards and cracking mock drafts. He did not crack my big board. He almost cracked my top 32 in the first round because he comes from the same team as Noah Fant. And his name is T.J. Hockenson. And he has made such a big name that in Mel Kiper's mock draft, have you seen Mel Kiper's mock draft first off?
I did not.
Okay, so this is not spoiled for you. Do you want to take a guess at how high Mel Kiper has Hockenson?
24.
Number 8 to the Lions.
That's ridiculous.
Has him number 8 to the Lions. Here's the thing I want to ask you when it comes to this, because both you and I have Fant. I actually had to ask you about this because I almost put Hockenson at 32. If you're an NFL team, what are you going for? Are you going for a more athletic tight end like Noah Fant? Or are you going to go with a tight end that had more production like T.J. Hockenson? Because the stats through 12 games for Noah Fant, 39 receptions, 519 yards, 7 touchdowns, where Hockenson had 49 receptions, 760 yards, 6 touchdowns.
It's hard to ignore production, and production is very valuable, but it really depends on what a team is looking for. Do you want that upside of a guy like Noah Fant? for his athletic ability. And you've seen that out of guys like Jimmy Graham, out of guys like, Gronkowski. You've seen teams go for it and try and make this happen. And, for the Lions specifically, having them go Hawkinson is interesting because they've got a former Patriot who might prefer an athletic guy like Noah Fant in that case, because that's what his past team has done. So it's hard to ignore the production, but it's not just what a player was able to do in college. Otherwise, all teams would just draft Big 12 quarterbacks. It's also about the upside, the potential for what your team wants out of them. And you specifically were asking about the Patriots before the podcast started, and that's why the Patriots, to me, are a team that would go for the athletic kind of guy. I had the Raiders going for a tight end, and the reason why I had the Raiders doing that with a guy like Noah Fant is because of the fact that they are a team that needs to get more explosive on offense. Having a reliable guy who's produced in the past is nice, but to have the potential upside of that athlete, I think is hard to ignore.
Well, and here's another thing, because I'm looking at the two also, and what it comes down to for me, from what I'm seeing, is, like I said, Noah Fant, the more athletic tight end, and like from what I'm reading with his scouting profiles, is he kind of sounds a little bit like Gronk to me. And the reason I say that is the one I'm looking at right now, his best trait they list is his rack ability. So the yards he's going to get, the ability for running after the catch, and racking up that yak. Whereas worst trait is, hey, I'm going to be on the line, and I have to create off of the line with my hand in the dirt, off of play action, kind of like on little out routes and stuff for play action routes. Whereas Hawkinson, his biggest and best trait is his versatility. Like, you can literally put him anywhere, and he can do it. He can receive. He can block. He can block in pass protection, run protection. His worst trait, and they even put a question mark like this because he might not have a worst trait, is his deep speed, because he's not super athletic like Noah Fant. And the thing that I wonder is, the more and more we dissect these guys, is how high is Hawkinson going to rise? Because I don't think Noah Fant is going to lose any ground in his stock. I think he's exactly where we have him, late first round, early second. But for Hawkinson, I think it comes down to, the more we look at him, the more we kind of dissect these two, I think it's going to become an issue, not an issue, but a term where it's like, hey, early on we weren't even looking at this guy. Now we are, to where he rises almost to the same level of Noah Fant, where teams may go, hey, we don't have to take Noah here. We can wait until wait until our second round pick, maybe trade up for a Hawkinson, or Hawkinson may be there when we make our pick in the second round.
It's possible. I think that something you got to look at, because of the connection with Detroit, is, Detroit taking Pettigrew in 2019.
You're saying because that's where Mel Kiper had Hawkinson going?
And also in 2014, the Lions taking Ebron over Aaron Donald, Odell Beckham Jr. That's the risk behind taking a tight end as early as 8. To shoot them up that high, there's a risk of the amount of players you're passing up that are probably more valuable to you. You can still get production out of a lot of tight ends. They don't have to be the best. I mean, there's only one Gronkowski, and then there's a big drop-off between the next tight ends. Now, Gronkowski's been injured lately, but that's a whole different story.
And he wasn't even like a top 10 pick.
Well,
if I'm not mistaken.
I'm just talking production in the NFL for teams that are trying to make Gronkowski happen. But exactly, he's not even a top 10 pick. So to shoot a tight end that high, to me, I think Kuiper's looking for a story. He wants some headlines. He's got to bring in those clicks. That's his job, because if you look at it, you search Hawkinson's name, You're going to get all this stuff of all these different articles saying Mel Kiper said this, Mel Kiper said that. To me, that's a big part of it. What it is, and the reasoning he is quoting is that he anticipates him to have a big workout. That's great. That's great that you think this guy is going to have a big workout and you think he's going to impress people. I'm going to therefore shoot him up to number 8 overall.
Yeah.
I think that's a little ridiculous.
Well, and I'm even looking here. Eric Ebron was the last tight end to be taken in the top 10. He was taken at
Yeah,
number
I think
10.
he's scared a lot of teams from doing it.
Well, and the one thing I will say, and you popped this into my head because you said Odell Beckham Jr. You know what I heard today on PTI about OBJ?
What's that?
Apparently, remember when the Giants were shopping him around and were going to trade him? Apparently, they shut down trade talks as soon as the Patriots said they were interested. As soon as the Patriots said they were interested, the Giants were like, nope, we're shutting it down. We're not going to trade him. We're going to keep him.
It's not like it mattered.
Because they're that scared.
The Patriots would have won anyways.
To the Patriots. And I'm even looking further.
Why did it matter? What were you guys going to do?
I'm at 2009 now, and a tight end has not been taken in the top 10. So I'm going to stop at 2009. For me, I think these two will be a unique kind of story as we go through because one of them could be taken in the first round. Who knows? Maybe one of them becomes
I'm sure one will get taken in the first round.
One of them could be taken even higher than what we have it because look at like Colton Miller last year. We didn't have him in our first round and he got taken.
Yeah, but Colton Miller was a different story.
John Gruden really liked him.
That was everybody scratched their heads and said, what?
Or Tremaine Edwards' little brother, Tyrell Edmonds.
Another one where
when he got
said,
taken by,
why?
what was that, the Steelers? And everyone's like, what? Why are you doing that? But let's move on. One guy that's not in our mock draft. He was 18 on my big board. However, Jeffrey Simmons. We come out with our big board last week, Brandon and I, and the day after the first one comes out, news breaks that Jeffrey Simmons tears his ACL. He will be basically out for the year.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this. Yes, he will probably not be a first rounder. What does this do to his draft stock? And could he be much like, I believe it was Jalen Smith, don't quote me on that one, linebacker from Notre Dame who tore his ACL in the bowl game, got drafted early second round by the Cowboys. Could Jeffrey Simmons see a similar fate of second round?
It certainly kind of tanks it down a little bit when you were supposed to be top half of the first round, and now you're going to be happy if you go in the second. But yeah, this pushes him down to like a second or a third. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
It was Jalen Smith.
That's not a bad thing necessarily because maybe you'll go to a better team. And that's not bad. You know, you want to be on a team that's good. You know, I think back to plenty of players who get hurt and then they kind of fall a little bit and then people are like, wow, how did this guy go in the 5th round? Well, he was supposed to go in the 1st, but he got hurt. You know, things like that happen. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing. Jeffrey Simmons, it's just an obvious, the team that decides they're willing to take the chance on him getting better, it's probably going to be a good home run for him.
And honestly, you know what I'm kind of sitting here looking at? So I am going to read off to you all the teams that could use an edge rusher as their top 3 needs. You ready for this?
So like everybody.
So mostly everyone. The 49ers, the Jets, the Raiders, the Lions, the Packers, the Falcons, the Panthers, and then the Steelers, the Seahawks, Ravens, and Chiefs. Out of most of those, Oakland, 35th pick. 49ers, 36th pick. You've got, the Packers at 44. That might be too low. I think this could be something for Jeffrey Simmons where, yes, we're not going to see him at the combine. We're not going to see his workouts because he tore his ACL. But he still can talk. Teams can interview him. Teams can call him on the phone and say, hey, Jeff, can we ask you a couple questions? Hey, how you doing? This is Bill Polian from such and such. I would not be surprised if, especially if the Raiders don't go with a pass rusher at 4, if San Francisco can't get their pass rusher at 2. If one of those two teams at 35 or 36 go, hey, we're going to take Jeffrey Simmons right here. Yeah, he'll be out for the year, but we get him back at the end of the year.
Well, that's why the Raiders make perfect sense to me, because they've got 3 first-round picks if they want to take them in the first, and they'll be right back in the second.
And they're not trying to win games, right?
Exactly. So they honestly, next year doesn't really matter that much to them. They can go ahead and lose games. That's fine.
It's their last year in Oakland before they moved to L.A. Or I'm not L.A.
Well, it's their last year in San Francisco.
Yeah,
they're going to be playing in San Francisco,
and then they moved to Las Vegas.
Yeah, they're going to go play in a baseball stadium again. They're used to it. It'll be all right. But anyways, it's just one of those things where they could really make it happen. And exactly what you're saying. In my case, I had them going Greedy Williams, cornerback, because I thought that's too good to pass up, and you'll be able to get pass rushers later. That'll be a good one that you can use. Maybe not this first year, but later down. You know, when in Gruden's year, when he only has like 7 years left. There you go. There's a good pass rusher for you. That one he said he needed.
Here's an interesting question for you. Who sees the end of their contract? John Gruden or Manny Machado?
Who sees it?
Yeah, like who? Because another thing with Manny Machado, we're going to throw him out there, could get injured.
Yeah. He's much more likely to see the end of his contract in baseball than John Gruden is.
Okay.
John Gruden has a much higher chance of being fired by year 5.
And I know we're not a baseball podcast, but the one thing I do want to throw out there about that, I know the ages are a little different because Pujols was about 5 years older, I want to say. But I find it funny, the whole, like, I see the 10-year contract and I go, oh, we're still doing that? We're still giving guys 10 years on contracts?
It's fun.
Like, we haven't decided that's a bad idea.
It doesn't matter. It works now. I saw somebody on Facebook say how specifically how the White Sox should have given him anything he wanted because who cares about the future? You can deal with that when you get to it. Which, to a sense, I agree because the White Sox have all the money in the world.
Yeah, but that just means that's how that person thinks in general.
It's just like, and, no. Maybe you should worry about the future.
So that's what we're going to say about climate change, right?
You gotta worry.
We'll worry when we get there, Mark.
It's saving your money. It's having a 401k, insurance, whatever it is. Maybe you should think about the future.
It's like I saw a tweet today that someone was like, oh my God, it's snowing in Las Vegas. And someone quoted this and goes, you guys don't understand like what this means for climate change, where it's snowing in Las Vegas. But last thing we'll talk about, the last thing we'll throw out there, every single draft, it seems like we get a team that wasn't in the first, had a pick earlier in the first. They trade back up into the first round to try to get a guy, whether it's like a Lamar Jackson getting that 5th-year option, whether it's like the Vikings trying to get the 5th-year option on Teddy Bridgewater. I want to ask you, who are some teams that you think could trade back up into the first round to try to get a prospect that they really like?
I mean, I honestly don't really think it's going to happen in this one because unless there's a faller, I don't really see the answer. Because, I mean, a lot of times it is that quarterback. You want the 5th-year option on the quarterback. But, you know, we're going to have to wait and see those fallers. We're also going to have to wait and see who are those teams that trade back. If a team like the Raiders trade one of these picks back and they accumulate picks, especially if they somehow trade the 4th, and they're like, you know what, we don't need this. We'll trade it and we'll get some stuff in the future. Maybe they do package something and they move up to 32. So they would that way they have 3 picks in the last like 8 picks of the draft. That'd be fun. But if there's someone that they want, why not? And they still accumulated picks. Teams like the Cowboys who might be looking to trade their way back into the first because they don't have anything. Same thing with the Saints can maybe try and pull something off. I would be a little bit surprised. I don't think it's that likely in this draft just because of the deeper talent, but also the fact that there's not a sure thing quarterback that's available for you.
And the thing just to kind of use as a reference, let's use the 32nd overall pick as that reference because that's where Lamar Jackson was drafted. In that Baltimore-Philly trade, Philly sent their 1st and their 4th, so the 32nd overall pick and the 132nd overall pick to Boston in exchange for the 52 and the 125. So Boston got a first and a fourth, and they gave up a second, a fourth, and a next year second.
Baltimore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Baltimore gave that up. So really you're looking to give up at least to get to 32. Hey, we'll swap fourths. I will give you my second, but I'm also going to give you a second next year as well. Mm-hmm. And I kind of look at teams who could do that. And one that I am going to throw out there, the Houston Texans. Not to get a quarterback, but to get, let's say, because right now their big needs are offensive line, safety, and cornerback. And the thing I look at is both of us have a safety late in our first round, that Jonathan Abram. If they really like him, they've got 2 second-round picks. They could move one of those to try to move up and get him. Whether they like a guy who I don't think was in your first round, a DeAndre Baker or a Julian Love, if they love one of those corners and want to take one of those, or if they're like, hey, we didn't take offensive line, we really like this offensive lineman.
But it might be, I think for those type of players, those are not players that I think are big enough to make a splash where you need that 5th-year option on them. Those would be guys that maybe you trade up into the top of the second.
Okay. So really it's who's going to trade up for Daniel Jones or Will Grier?
I mean, that's what typically those 5th-year options are, those quarterbacks or somebody else who fell, who you're like, why is this really good pass rusher falling? I'm going to try and jump on them. It's we talk about the teams trading up into the first often, but I don't think that there's a guy really worthwhile for it here.
Which, I mean,
until we see how things actually shake out with fallers and things like that.
You know what? I'm going to throw one out there that I think could work. Let me see. So they have the 46th overall pick. Damn it, they don't have a 4th-round pick, but they do have a 5th. I wonder if they could switch 5th for it. Basically, the Washington Redskins. I wonder if they could be a team at 15. They look at it. Let's say Murray and Haskins are off the board. And let's even say the Dolphins take Drew Lock for some reason. If they look at it and go, hey, let's get a wide receiver, then let's try to get the Patriots on the phone. Get the Rams on the phone. Let's see what they want for that 32nd overall pick, especially the Patriots, because the Patriots are notorious for, we got this pick?
Yeah, trade.
Oh, we'll trade back. We'll trade back and accumulate. Trade back and accumulate. Because Bill Belichick knows that drafting is just throwing as much shit at the wall as possible and seeing what sticks. The more draft picks you have, the more you have a chance to hit on some of them. Maybe that's what happens. The Redskins, hey, we didn't take one at 15. Let's take a Will Grier or Daniel Jones at 32 so we can get that option on them.
It's possible, but these just aren't quarterbacks worth doing it. I mean, and that's the thing. Lamar Jackson was a quarterback who was able to start and win games. I don't see Daniel Jones being the guy who's able to win NFL games.
Last question that goes into this that I'm going to ask you about is the Bears and Cowboys.
Yeah.
Do not have first-round picks.
Correct.
Now, the Bears, I'm going to automatically write off, will probably not be moving up in because their first pick is in the 3rd round. Could Dallas move up? Could you see Dallas, hey, we don't have a first-round pick. Let's try to get back into the first round.
Like I said, I don't think there's anything to trade up for. And the Cowboys are a pretty good team. They'll be okay.
Because they're going to have to wait all the way until 58. So kind of middle of the day, day 2.
Like I said, there's really not anything worthwhile in the first round. If there's somebody who falls, trade up in the 2nd round. It's a lot easier to do than trading up to the 1st.
And it's a lesser price. Plus, Jerry Jones.
That's why it's easier to do it.
Jerry Jones has done that because that's what he did for Jalen Smith. But any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
Not necessarily. I'm excited to actually have some franchise tags and things like that happening soon, so that way we kind of know some of these answers, because of course that changes everything.
Well, and you kind of sparked that in my mind. So before our next mock draft, we are going to have the combine will have happened. So that's going to be the 26th through the 4th. So basically next Tuesday when we record, happy Combine Day, Mark. That's when it starts, and it'll be going on for the next week. So we got the combine before our next mock draft. We're going to have franchise tags before our mock draft, and a week or two of free agency before our next mock draft, which I believe is March 19th will be the next mock draft. That's the night we're recording, so March 20th is when that will come out. But I want to thank you guys for checking out this podcast. Make sure to check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/most valuable podcast. You can also rate and review us on iTunes and Apple Podcasts, the Onside Kick. It really helps us out. It makes sure that we hit more and more and get into more and more ears and kind of spread us out so we get more people listening to the podcast. I also want to thank you guys for dealing with my voice as it started to kind of die a little bit more here at the end. So I'm going to make this short and sweet. If you're on YouTube, thank you guys for checking us out. If you're on the podcast services around the world, thank you guys for listening to us all the way through. Thank you guys for everything. And as always, have a good day, everybody.